Okay folks, welcome back. So what I'm going to do in this video is just take you over and show you how I made my lathe copy machine. If you guys have seen that video, then probably you guys been wanting to see a little more how I made it. Well, this video, I'll show you as much as I can of it. So I started out real simple, just with a piece 18 inches wide and made it, it's a piece of 3/4 inch melamine. And then all I did was cut a few pieces 2 inches. I put 4 pieces 2 inches on this side, and that was to stiffen this upright that I needed for this channel, and also that gives me somewhere for my template to lay on. As you can see, the template laying on there gave that somewhere. It's nice and close to the back end of this thing, so it's not a big long distance. And then I think it's about a 6-inch wide channel, and then the other side's done the same way with a few pieces of 2-inch. One thing I would do different here is I would make these all one piece, but when I was building it, I didn't really know what I was headed towards. So that channel made it so that this can slide back and forth. This is the attachment where the grinder's hooked to, and I needed that back and forth motion. So this actually made a very good mechanism to move that back and forth. There's no, I found that when I was doing it, it just kept the sawdust cleaned out, so there was no worries about, if I was running little bearings on top of something, then I'm sure that dirt would get under it and it would leave little bumps and jiggers. But with this thing, I didn't have to worry about dirt. It just kept it pushed out all the time, and this always stayed nice and tight to the bottom, so that made it nice and consistent. So the next thing I did was I needed a channel to make my tailstock run back and forth. So the way that I did that was just to use a few more pieces of melamine and just screwed them down. I nailed them first, but then afterwards I took, and you can see the screw holes, I screwed them down ever so far from the top and also from the bottom, because this needs to be super rigid, because the tailstock is going to get attached to it, and you want to tighten the material in, you're going to need something pretty rigid. So I just left a spot there, I think a couple inches wide, big enough for a big washer to slide in there, and then left, I think, about a 3/4 inch channel for a 5/8 bolt to run back and forth. So that was, so the base is pretty straightforward. The tailstock here, I'll just slide it out now. So I've just got it just set in there. So the tailstock just slides back and forth, of course. So the way I made it was just to take a few pieces of melamine, and I just air nailed these together and drilled a hole right in the center. I think these are somewhere about 6 by 5 is what I made them. And then I built this area up here, leaving this spot in the center. So I think these are about 1.5 or 1 3/8 or something along there, and a couple layers of them. And then that gives me a spot that I can get a wrench in there and tighten this tailstock down. Once it was slid into place, I can stick a wrench in and tighten it down. So then it was just a few more layers. I got 4 more layers of melamine, and then what I did was actually just set a bearing in each side of it. As you can see, and this is the part that was real important, is once I had this part right here could just be air nailed together, it didn't really matter, but these pieces from here up needed to be hooked really securely into these few pieces that were going to get bolted to the table. So what I did was I think I put these 2 layers on, and then I ran some 4-inch screws down through, and then I put the last 4 layers on and ran some 4-inch screws down through them in order to really secure that, and that made a nice rigid tailstock. And the other thing I did was kind of neat too, was in order to keep that bolt from turning in the slot, I just drilled a 1-inch hole in the end of this 5/8 the 5/8 melamine, and it just made a real tight fit for this 5/8 bolt. It was to fit over the end of it, and that just keeps it from turning when I go to tighten down my tailstock when it's slid into place. The other thing was kind of neat about this too is once I had my tailstock slid into place, this would be set into the end of the material. Well, what I'd do is I'd make sure that these nuts were, forward quite a little bit. I didn't have them, because there is some space. You can see that it would move back and forth. But what I can do with that is, if I left them back like that, when I had my tailstock tightened right down, then what I could do is hold this with a wrench and turn this one in with a wrench, and that would actually pull that bolt forward, which would give me that little bit of extra tightness once this was all together. So, similar to a regular lathe, I was able to turn my tailstock in and tighten it down a little more. So the headstock is basically, I'll just go over and show you. The headstock is basically exactly the same. I got it so that I just got it bolted down on the same way. The only difference is on this one, I used a piece of threaded rod, and that was so that I could bolt this pulley on the end. It's just a wooden pulley, and you know, there's a nut on this side and a nut on this side, and just tighten it down. And the other difference is I still had the point, but with the first nut here, what I did was take my grinder and just ground away at it so that it left some points, and then that way there, when the stock was pushed against this, as you can see, then it would set into the wood and keep it from just spinning in the lathe. It's going to obviously spin, but we want the power to go to the stick, so that's the way I kept it from spinning. So pretty simple. And then my motor, just mount it to the side. Just got a couple of screws, just stuck this to the side of it, and I'm probably going to take it off and use it on something else for a little while. But anyhow, then, so this is this box here, as you can see, that slid back and forth. So now we'll move on to the saw part. This was pretty neat how this all turned out, but I am going to make some changes to this. What I found is when I was done my turning, there's some, you know, there's somewheres that I'm getting some little lines. Even if I went super slow, I'd still get some cutting in with this thing, and I figured out where it's coming from is, if you watch this, I've got little drawer slides that do the in and out motion. If you watch this, you can see that there's a lot of movement in these drawer slides. These drawer slides are not really meant to lay on their flat like that, like so it'll rock in there. So one of the changes that I'm going to make on this thing is I'm actually going to get a bigger grinder. This thing's only a very light duty grinder. It does the job, but I want to get a big one and put it on it. And then when I do, what I'll do is I'll make a slide mechanism for in and out, very similar to what I have for the back and forth motion. So I've got just a set of springs on it to spring load it, and you know, I'll do the same kind of thing, but I'm not going to do that right now. I've got a kitchen to build, and once I get it done, then I'll spend some more time on this. I'll get a new grinder, a heavy duty one, and make that slide mechanism up. If I had to use this right the way it is, I could. It just takes a little bit of sanding, and literally this stick right here that I've got in my hand, I literally spent a minute sanding it, and it just made all the difference in the world. You can still see some little saw curves in it from where there was some movement, but with a little wee bit more sanding, I could make this into a very usable stick. As you can see, the nice thing about it is there's no blowouts, which with the router, I know a couple of years ago I made one. The first router lathe that I made, it actually had the bit come in like this, and this is what most people do. They'll bring the bit in like to the stick like this, but it obviously didn't work good because it didn't keep it together very long. And then what I did was I turned to the floating router where the bit came in like this, and it worked way better than that one. But what I'm finding is this one works the best out of all of them. Do I have to do a little bit of sanding? You bet. But is it chipping it out? Not at all. And you know, that's with no matter how fast I go, it will not chip it out. So what I might do, it was suggested that I try putting a router, making a little, you know, because it's real easy to make up this little attachment here. What I might do, once I get a little more time, is I might actually make one up here and have a router slide in and try it and just make sure that it won't work, and see how it does and document it so you guys can actually see how it does work. So the other neat aspect I like about this too is when I'm doing my routering or doing the work on the lathe now, what I'm going to be able to do is look through this little window, this little Lexon window, and actually this is where I can see my material, see what I'm doing. And then what I was able to do is this is where the follow pin would follow along. Well, what I could do to be able to tell where I was at in the whole scheme of things is I was just able to run my finger in front of the pin, and then I could let it go in, and then once I got close, then I could just let it ride, the pin just ride right on it. So there you can see the little follow pin here. So pretty straightforward. So there's a little bit more work to do to this. Like I said, I want to put a bigger grinder on it and change this slide mechanism, but that's for another video, and you guys will have to keep tuning in to see it. So hopefully you guys are having fun, and we'll see you next time.